everybody, Jedimanda here to give you another sewing video for the week. This week I'm going to talk on a topic that has a lot of people split in the fashion and costuming industry. And that is the war between the Rotary Cutters versus the scissors. Now, many people when they first start out sewing usually use scissors, and that's totally cool. But you get to a point where you're starting to cut out a whole lot of fabric in your sewing game that your arm gets tired, your hand gets tired from the constant munch across the fabric, that you want to kind of step up your game a little bit and try out a rotary cutter. A rotary cutter is basically a single blade that is circular, that is hooked onto a blade, a handheld blade, that basically you just drop down the little handle thing here, and I know this is really scientific, guys, and the blade pops out, and all you do is basically just slide across your fabric on a self-healing cutting mat, and then your fabric's cut. But for some reason, a lot of people within the fashion and costuming community only prefer scissors over rotary cutters for various reasons. But what I'm gonna do is just go over to my cutting table and show you guys the difference that these cuts make. Honestly, there's not a lot. It boils down to personal preference and whichever you want to do. Personally, I am a huge fan of the rotary cutter because it's faster and it's easier to line up your patterns and cut and step with this and having to pin everything. I use pattern weights, which I'll show you guys over here. Okay everybody, what I want to show you first is my self-healing cutting mat. That is this wonderful green thing with random paint spots. What self-healing means is that when you take your rotary blade across the surface of the mat, it does not divide the mat and therefore leave a seam that your rotary cutter just made. It basically bounces back so you can keep on cutting forever and ever and ever and it'll be fine. There are several mounts out there that actually are plastic that leave grooves that are fine, but eventually when you keep cutting more and more, the grooves will keep staying into the mat and they won't bounce back and your mat will be useless. So when you're using a rotary cutter, you mainly want your fabric, obviously, your self-healing mat, and something called pattern weights. I use these washers as pattern weights that I can get at hardware stores. What this does is that it actually just weighs down the fabric so it doesn't move or shift when I'm cutting it. And I just slice right through it like butter. Boom, that's a rotary cutter. When you are cutting with scissors, you want to make sure, especially when you're using patterns, that you have your pattern pinned down to the fabric. Don't use pattern weights because that will shift when you use scissors, because with scissors you need to get under the fabric to cut it, thus moves the fabric around. But ultimately, it does the same thing. And you can control it a little more, especially if you're not used to a rotary cutter. Ultimately, once again, it winds down to preference. I like the rotary cutter, but there are some times that I use the scissors. Just a word of warning, if you use a rotary cutter, get your self-healing mat. Save up those Joann's coupons because they can be really expensive, guys. Don't forget to use the hashtag #SewWithTheForce or tag me in your photos if you're using any of my sewing help. I'd love to see what you guys are creating, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!